Omar Abdullah, the Vice President of the JKNC or the National Conference, will be the Chief Minister for the second time. But this time it is going to be a crown of thorns for Omar Abdullah. He knows and is aware that unlike his previous stint as Chief Minister between 2008 and 2014, where he headed a JKNC Congress alliance, his second innings has serious shortcomings. One of the things that the new government is likely to do is to start getting moving the procedures or taking it up with the concerned authorities to have them released. Now, apart from these various powers that the LG has, the Anti-Corruption Bureau, prosecution matters and prisons will also now be under his ambit. Just before the elections was announced, Omar Abdullah had maintained that he would not contest as he had no intention of, and as he put it very colorfully, waiting outside the LG's office to sign a file even for the appointment of a peon. But Omar Abdullah said he relented, and I'd spoken to him when I was in Srinagar, and he said the reason he did that was that his National Conference colleagues told him that if the party was planning to participate in this election, Omar's refusal to contest would doom not only their chances, but wipe out the party. Nothing but the truth. Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa of India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will look at key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you without holding back on the truth. After a gap of 10 years, the Modi government finally held the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly elections. It was also the first Assembly election being held in J&K after the abrogation of Article 370 in August 2019. By doing so, the Modi government removed, when they abolished Article 370, the Modi government removed the special powers that the state enjoyed and reduced J&K to a union territory like that of Delhi and Puducherry. The reorganization also saw Ladakh being bifurcated from J&K. So the high-stakes poll battle saw the India bloc partners, the Jammu and Kashmir National Conference or JKNC, and the Congress win a simple majority. In doing so, the India bloc thwarted the game plan of the Bharatiya Janata Party or BJP to win the polls and anoint a chief minister. And if it had done so, if the BJP had won, it would have been the first time in Jammu and Kashmir's electoral history that it would have its own chief minister and would have won a majority. But the BJP failed to do so. So Omar Abdullah, the Vice President of the JKNC or the National Conference, will be the Chief Minister for the second time. But this time it is going to be a crown of thorns for Omar Abdullah. In this episode of Nothing But the Truth, we will analyze the results of the J&K Assembly and what are the enormous challenges that Omar Abdullah and his alliance partners face as they get down to ruling this union territory. That's why we call it a crown of thorns. Let me say that Omar Abdullah is probably the first one to admit that winning the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly polls was probably the easier part. Now comes the really tough part. He knows and is aware that unlike his previous stint as Chief Minister between 2008 and 2014, where he headed a JKNC Congress alliance, his second innings has serious shortcomings. As he told India Today TV, and I'm quoting Omar Abdullah in this, "In my first innings, I was Chief Minister of the most empowered state in the country. But now, J&K is the country's most disempowered union territory." And he went on to add, also, while the win is humbling, the expectations of the people are scary as they are enormous. That's Omar Abdullah as soon as he won the elections, and this is what his assessment was. He's also acutely aware, Omar Abdullah is acutely aware that his powers would be greatly curtailed this time round as compared when he was Chief Minister in 2008 to 2014. And this actually got even more, his powers were even more limited because just before the elections were held, the centre, the Modi government, amended the rules of what is called the transaction of business of the government of the Union Territory of J&K, or Jammu and Kashmir. Now, under this, the amendments that were made under these rules ensured that Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha had even more administrative and legal powers than ever before. Just to give you an example, the new changes bestowed on the Lieutenant Governor the power to transfer IAS and IPS officers. Remember, this was earlier when J&K was a state, the power vested with the Chief Minister. The Lieutenant Governor will also control the Jammu and Kashmir Police and law and order and have a say in the appointment of judicial officers, including the Advocate General. Now, why does that become important? Because if you recall, a lot of what the National Conferences called political prisoners were detained in jail after the abrogation of Article 370, and thousands of them are still to be let out. So one of the things that the new government is likely to do is to start getting moving the procedures or taking it up with the concerned authorities to have them released. Now, apart from these various powers that the LG has, the Anti-Corruption Bureau, prosecution matters and prisons will also now be under his ambit. So, in many senses, the powers that Omar Abdullah had as a chief minister severely truncated in his second innings. In fact, so much so that when just before the elections was announced, Omar Abdullah had maintained that he would not contest, as he had no intention of, and as he put it very colorfully, waiting outside the LG's office to sign a file even for the appointment of a peon. The other reason that Omar didn't want to contest this time was that he had failed to win a parliamentary seat in the Lok Sabha election in May 2024, losing to the jailed engineer Rashid, an independent candidate in the Baramulla constituency. But Omar Abdullah said he relented, and I'd spoken to him when I was in Srinagar, and he said the reason he did that was that his National Conference colleagues told him that if the party was planning to participate in this election, Omar's refusal to contest would doom not only their chances, but wipe out the party. So he did contest and he won. That's highly creditable to Omar Abdullah. But what makes Omar Abdullah's job even tougher is the election, that this election has thrown up a deeply polarized verdict between the Kashmir Valley and Jammu. And of the total of 90 seats, Kashmir has 47 seats and Jammu 43 seats. While the National Conference's individual tally of 42 included 7 seats in the Jammu region, these were largely in the Muslim-dominated constituencies of that region. The India Bloc Alliance was led down by the Congress, which won only 1 seat in Jammu, and that too a Muslim-dominated constituency, despite contesting 29 out of Jammu's 43 seats that it has. The Congress won 5 other seats, and they came largely from the Muslim-majority seats in the valley. And even though the BJP did not win any of the 19 seats it contested in the valley, it won all the Hindu-dominated seats in Jammu with a tally of 29. This, in a sense, means that Omar Abdullah will have to strive hard to win the confidence of Jammu, where a majority of the Hindu community lives. Now, Hasib A. Drabu, a former Jammu and Kashmir finance minister who had come on India Today TV as well, believes that the election results have only added to the fissures between Jammu and Kashmir. Now, as Drabu puts it, and I'm quoting him, the two regions now share little else than a troubled past, having nothing in common geographically, linguistically, culturally, ethnically, economically, and in terms of religion. This is what he said. There is a deep divide by them and between Jammu and Kashmir, and they have nothing in common in all these things that he had listed. Now, Omar Abdullah knows the gravity of that divide and is determined that his government will not just be a JKNC Congress one, that is just an India Alliance one, but a dispensation that represents all sections of the Jammu and Kashmir society. And he said soon after that, and I'm quoting him, the votes did not split the Kashmir and Jammu mountains. People voted with responsibility. Now it is the responsibility of our alliance to give a clean government which will deliver on the expectations of the people. For Omar Abdullah, the biggest challenge is dealing with the central government and getting it to move quickly on their biggest demand, one of their biggest demands, which is restoring statehood to Jammu and Kashmir, which was promised by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. For only then will Abdullah have the powers to tackle the major problems that Jammu and Kashmir faces. After the win, Omar Abdullah chose his words carefully when he talked about dealing with the center and said that he wanted a cordial rather than a hostile relationship with the Modi government. He added it would need two hands to clap, meaning that he expected the center to be helpful and cooperative. Now, as regards concerns that the restoration of statehood may be delayed, Omar Abdullah told India Today, and I'm quoting him, "I would like to believe the Honorable Prime Minister who has committed to restoring statehood. I don't recall a speech where he said statehood would be restored only when the BJP is in power, or that if the people of J&K do not vote for the BJP, they will be punished." That is Omar Abdullah putting the onus on Prime Minister Narendra Modi to move towards giving J&K its statehood back again. Now, Omar Abdullah is likely to put the pressure on this particular demand, and he said that the first resolution of the J&K Legislative Assembly, the new J&K Legislative Assembly, will be on the restoration of statehood. And a JKNC leader told India Today that the strategy is that if the central government delays the decision to restore statehood, they have other options, including the Supreme Court, going to the Supreme Court to address the issue. The real other challenge that is there is that in its manifesto, the JKNC, the National Conference, has promised 12 guarantees, including restoration of Article 370, really tough one, which even Omar Abdullah knows, pushing for an India-Pakistan dialogue on Kashmir, ensuring the release of political prisoners, which I had mentioned earlier, and introduction of laws to reserve land and job rights for the locals. Now, Omar Abdullah knows that restoration of Article 370 is more of a rhetorical demand, and particularly if the Modi government remains in power, and therefore statehood of the state of Jammu and Kashmir is going to be his first big quest. Then, and even as when I spoke to him during the campaign, he says that he understands that these demands may take a little time, and his top priority is to address people's everyday issues such as jobs, inflation, provision of civic utilities. All of these have been neglected, he claims, and he also intends implementing his promise of freebies for electricity, gas, and food. However, there are constraints, especially with the fact that the center dispenses and controls much of J&K finances. So Omar will be forced to maintain cordial relations to even get this particular job done. Now, many in Kashmir argued that the win for the National Conference is really a great opportunity for it to be a pan-Jammu and Kashmir party and certainly work towards reviving its prospects in the plains of Jammu. And so Omar Abdullah believes, and his party believes, that it was the NC's, or the National Conference's, vociferous opposition to the BJP's policies, including truncating of the powers of the states, the anti-encroachment drives in J&K to retrieve state land from the people, the high unemployment rate that is there, and the surge in power bills. All these factors propelled the JKNC to power. So the other part is that Omar Abdullah's National Conference is also being seen as the shield by many of the citizens in the state to combat, this is what party men say, the onslaught of New Delhi's policies post the Modi government's abrogation of Article 370. In fact, the BJP is being viewed with suspicion in the valley for its alleged anti-Muslim policies across the country, with recently, and among them is the recently introduced Waqf Amendment Bill, which has drawn particularly strong resentment in the valley. Meanwhile, the BJP can rightfully take credit for emerging as the party with the largest vote share among all parties in J&K. The BJP won 25.6% compared to the National Conference's 23.4% and the Congress's 12%. The BJP can also take heart from the 29 seats it won in Jammu, despite the fact that there was clear discontent in the region, especially over the civic and development issues. The Modi government also deserves praise for ensuring the peaceful conduct of the election, which saw turnouts of over 65% in most constituencies. Now, in the Jammu region, the BJP had smartly dropped many of its stalwarts to make way for new faces. It also campaigned extensively on how the abrogation of Article 370 had brought peace to the region and that only the BJP could thwart the valley's vociferous demand for the restoration of Article 370. That argument, in fact, overrode concerns over civic issues and saw the BJP win big in Jammu. Now, when I spoke to a Jammu and Kashmir expert, he told me, and he said, and I'm quoting him, the BJP certainly brought peace to the region, and that was creditable. But what it didn't do was to bring sufficient development that they had promised in the past 5 years. Coupled with that, he says, was the aloofness of the administration. And all these factors, he says, could have led to the BJP getting less numbers in Jammu. He goes on to tell me that the BJP was lucky that the Congress put up a very poor show despite the people's seething anger against the administration, and so the BJP was able to cash in on the peace dividend. But let's be clear, the results are a setback both for the BJP and the Modi government. After all, they had controlled all the levers of power in J&K for the past 5 years, ever since the abrogation of Article 370. Now, through the delimitation process, they were able to increase the number of seats in Jammu by 6 from 37 to 43. Remember, Jammu is dominated by the Hindu community. When it came to Kashmir, only one additional seat was given to them, and the number in Kashmir went up from 46 to 47. So Jammu gained 6 more seats as a result of delimitation. The other aspect of the delimitation process, which experts say, is that it also saw 9 constituencies being carved out in Jammu and reserved for scheduled tribes. Simultaneously, the BJP tried to win over the Pahari community by including them in the reserve category. But despite the party's efforts to woo Muslim tribal voters, it failed to make any impact, with the Jammu and Kashmir National Conference and the Congress Alliance bagging 7 seats. The 2 ST reserve seats were won by independents. Now, another of the BJP strategy failed, and the idea, the BJP, that's what experts say, was to shore up their numbers by unleashing what are called alleged proxies, such as the J&K Apni Party and the Democratic Progressive Azad Party, apart from a host of independents, and these were asked to contest in the valley to cut into the National Conference vote, but this strategy failed, with the National Conference winning big. So while the BJP, or particularly the Modi government, could be satisfied and be praised for holding a free and fair election in Jammu and Kashmir, the fact was that despite the BJP getting 29 seats and claiming one of the largest vote shares of all the parties that was there, it had failed in its big bid to form a government on its own in Jammu and Kashmir for the first time and anoint its own chief minister. So in that respect, that is a major setback for the BJP, particularly, as I mentioned, it had all the levers of power, and it in fact tried to use other means as well in terms of what I said, in terms of putting up independents or alleged proxies to defeat the NCB. That game plan was thwarted. Another party to face a severe setback in this poll was the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, headed by former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti. If you recall, her father had allied with the BJP in the initial part of 2014 onwards, when the elections were held. And of course, they then broke apart and the PDP went on its own. In this particular assembly, in the 90 seats that it had contested, the PDP was reduced to just 3 seats, winning only Kupwara, Pulwama and Thral. The National Conference, in fact, swept South Kashmir, which was once considered to be a stronghold of the PDP. And if you look among those that lost from the PDP, there was Iltija Mufti, Mehbooba's daughter, who made an unsuccessful debut when she contested from the home constituencies of the Muftis. Iltija, of course, is not disheartened and vows to continue her fight. However, not just Iltija, but all political players will now have to navigate the minefield that is Jammu and Kashmir and rise above petty political considerations to ensure that both peace and development prevail in this sensitive border state, or actually region, soon to be a state, hopefully. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. For an in-depth story on the J&K outcome, as well as the BJP's big win in Haryana, to read the latest India Today issue. I look forward to having you with me next week. Nothing But the Truth.